So there are differing views out there regarding citizen review boards. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a fan of that current discussion. And part of the reason why I say that is because I don't know to what degree until I hear some more about the role that the folks that are on those review boards are going to get educated to what officers actually go through, right? And part of what has existed in case law as far as qualified immunity goes, right, is that you're limiting where there's not 20/20 hindsight. I mean, that's one of the entire purposes that has been determined to be very important by the courts, is that there isn't some sort of 20/20 after action hindsight, and there really isn't any sort of standard by which community review boards are going to be involved in that. Plus, I don't, I'm open to any idea to improve relationships, right? And if this ends up being a successful suggestion, then great. But one question I would have about that would be that officers are already accountable to the community because they're accountable to case law, and their accountability to constitutionality of their actions, and they're accountable to the laws that have been put forward, that we are required to act upon. And they have policy and procedure per agency that they're also required to follow. So those are 4 different levels of standards that control their conduct already. And now we're talking about a 5th standard on top of that, which, as far as I know, there really isn't set any sort of understanding. I mean, we've already talked about how officers are afraid of how they're going to be judged, and how if something gets a lot of public attention, right, that it's going to skew the way the agency or the public or the courts view that particular situation for them. And so now we're talking about trying to help officers not live in fear, but yet incorporating this review board that's now going to look over all their actions. And I mean, what's going to be the determination? I mean, to what degree are they going to be able to determine the actions of the law enforcement agency against the officer? I mean, there's either a criminal violation or there's not, right? There's either a policy violation or there's not. So it seems to me, when it comes interpretively, I don't know where they're actually going to play into it. So I guess overall I would say initially I have great skepticism about this as a solution, and I'm afraid it is kind of maybe a knee-jerk solution where the community wants more involvement in law enforcement, but at the same time, law enforcement is not supposed to be attached to the community like that, because they're responsible for having to step into situations and activate, and take actions that may go against what individuals would want per se, right? But it's in the interest of public safety. So I don't know. I think it's a very complex area that I think we're going to have to see and hear a whole lot more about before we know what to do with that. As far as going out and dealing with use of force issues, again, I don't know. I mean, I mentioned the liability or the concern that I had in crisis intervention about going and knocking on that door, trying to repair after a use of force incident, and re-showing up at somebody's residence. I don't know if that's going to be a good scenario. I mean, if that works, and I mean, if there's a way we can do that safely, then I'm all for it. I don't know. Either way, we've got to try and bridge the gap and bring those folks back in to the fold and not leave them having a negative attitude towards law enforcement, or like vice versa. But I don't know. I don't know what the best ways are to handle that at this current time, I guess. I think, honestly, that the knowledge and imparting the knowledge should be the focus, right? And trying to bring everybody to a base level of understanding first before we try and incorporate a lot of change. Because I'm afraid any change that doesn't incorporate the knowledge of how the system actually works is going to be trying to just substantiate or perpetuate a system that hasn't worked already. And that, to me, seems like a lot of wasted energy and effort. But, again, I'm all for anything that works. The crisis intervention movement was a good example of what did. So